The Locked On Podcast Network presents the NBA Big 3 in 30. The 3 biggest stories in the NBA from our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The NBA Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest stories in the NBA. You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
And joining me now, Camille Davis, who does a great job covering the Milwaukee Bucks for us over at, you guessed it, Locked On Bucks. And it's been, I think, a very interesting summer in Milwaukee, Camille, because there have been no shortage of rumors as far as Giannis Antetokounmpo and whether or not he's going to stay, whether or not he's going to go. Of course, he still is a member of the Milwaukee Bucks, despite all that speculation. And Milwaukee made one of the most interesting moves, or I guess combination of moves this summer, waiving and stretching Damian Lillard and then signing Miles Turner into cap space, which absolutely nobody saw coming. So I say all that to say this: what's going on with the Milwaukee Bucks this summer?
That summary summed it up pretty well right there. I think to quickly say it before going in depth of it, it's the first step in a new direction with Giannis. We are so used to how these teams are constructed with Giannis, and we're so used to him having that main co-star for years, even before the Dame trade. You know, you had Chris Middleton, who was a steady number 2. Now, there were arguments of should it be a 2 or a 3? You get Drew Holiday, and then you can argue 2A, 2B, whatever it is in that situation. You still have Chris, you go and get Dame. That doesn't work out. And now you're in a situation for the Bucks where there's no true co-star where you can look at one player and say, that's the other guy. And now it's a collection of guys with the Bucks moving into really embracing that point Giannis that we saw at flashes throughout last season when Dame was out with the blood clots, and as well as when Jason Kidd was coach and put that ball in the Giannis's hands. And now Doc and the Bucks are going forward next season with that being the game plan of, hey, Giannis, you are running the offense. So while some of the names that are back are familiar to who we saw last year, the role in which they play this upcoming year, I think, is going to be pretty different.
So you mentioned point Giannis, and that's where I want to go with this next, because I do think that's a fascinating way for this team to look. Obviously, they did that, as you mentioned, when Jason Kidd was coach back in like 2017, 2018, before he was fired. Obviously, with Dame missing time because of the blood clot last year, was done out of necessity. But what are both the good and the bad things that you think are part of the point Giannis experience with the Bucks?
I think a great thing with it is that, one, he's happy playing that way. And you mentioned when we opened just all of the talk around Giannis being Milwaukee. And I think him finding that happiness on the court, in addition to being in a situation where he thinks he can win, is really important. You put the ball in his hand. And I think one of the big benefits is that is, one, I don't think a lot of teams are going to press Giannis pushing the ball up, which was one of the reasons Doc was kind of like, we could actually go with this because it's really hard to pressure Giannis in the backcourt, get the ball over the half court line, and initiate that offense. And also, I think it sets up the other teammates really well when you don't have that true number 2, putting the ball in Giannis's hands, letting his gravity dictate where the ball goes. He's a really good passer. So if he can draw coverages, see a teammate open and get the ball to him, like, there's going to have to knock down some open shots and make sure they're moving the ball and playing defense. So I think him being the engine of the team makes a lot of sense, especially when there's no true co-star on the team next to him. Now, the thing that gives me some pause is just that Giannis only plays at one speed unless he's tired. When he gets tired, you can tell. And that's my concern with the usage going up even more for him. When he does get in those moments where he's tired, how slow does the offense now move? Because now he's walking the ball up. Are we not initiating offense until, there's 15 seconds on the clock, 16 seconds? Like, you don't want to get in those situations. You want to be able to play kind of loose and free, and the randomness of it to a certain degree, with Giannis being the conductor of all of that chaos.
So what does the Bucks plan offensively look like when Giannis is not on the floor? Because I think in today's day and age, like, it's probably foolish to expect him or anybody else to play 82 games. And we know he's not playing 48 minutes a night. And you just mentioned, the offense maybe not looking as great when he gets tired, but who do you think that they can rely upon to kind of get that show running when he is on the bench, or maybe when he's not active on a random Tuesday night in January, as they try and preserve his legs for what I imagine Milwaukee hopes to be a run into the postseason?
Yeah, I think it's going to fall out on Kevin Porter Jr., to be honest with you. And the reason why I think the Bucks were so adamant about trying to bring him back, it's a lot of opportunity for him here, especially with Dame out. And the play we saw with him on the Bucks was far different than the play we saw from him earlier in the season when he was a Clipper. So the Bucks are banking on continuing that development. We've seen it in flashes before, even when he was in Houston, that KPJ can really light it up. He can initiate the offense, more of a score first combo guard type of player, but Doc Rivers has really been talking about putting that emphasis in building up his point guard skills, learning that drive and kick, not dribbling just to dribble, but with a purpose, trying to find your teammates. And I think a lot of it's going to fall on his shoulders to initiate offense when Giannis is off the floor in those games when Giannis is sitting. Because the Bucks have a lot of combo guards. Really, no one I would point to and say a real true point guard, because you have Cole Anthony coming off the bench as well. Ryan Rollins is in that mix. You have Gary Trent Jr., who's that combo guard as well. AJ Green, more of a 2-3, but like just a lot of guys that are more so combo, need help getting their own shots. And the shot creators on the Bucks are really Kevin Porter Jr., Gary Trent Jr., and then Bobby Portis off the bench, in addition to Cole Anthony, who is more like that bench guy for them.
Do you think that is enough shot creation behind Giannis?
If Giannis is see, only if Giannis remains healthy the whole way through. Like if anything happens to Giannis, all of this kind of goes out the window. In those games when he does sit, or if injury happens, knock on wood that they don't, and nothing major happens to him, but you're going to have a hodgepodge of guys really trying to figure it out. And I think in those games, what you'll see is just a higher volume of threes going up. And then the defense has to ratchet up a notch for this Bucks team to take a step. And honestly, that's the side of the ball for the Bucks, where I think if they are going to be a team that has home court come playoff time, top 4 in the East, the defense is going to have to at the very least, be top 10. If they want to really be something, it has to be a top 5 defense, I think.
I think that's a fair way to look at things, especially when a little bit of scoring pop leaves in Damian Lillard. And I do want to kind of transition to that because I think it's fair to say that was the most shocking move in the NBA this summer. Like Kevin Durant got traded, but everybody expected Kevin Durant to get traded. I don't think anyone's bingo card had Damian Lillard is going to get waived and stretched, despite the fact that he did tear his Achilles in the postseason and obviously would not have been available to play in all likelihood for the entirety of this upcoming season. But I want to go back to that day in July. What went through your mind the moment you got the update that, they're cutting Dame?
What? That was the initial. I said what so many times in like a 5-minute.
I remember I watched the show that you and Justin Garcia, your co-host on Locked On Bucks, I watched the show you guys did that day, and it's just like, because I was in disbelief. I cannot imagine that they feel any differently. This just has to be stunning.
It was, because you see the Miles Turner news come first, and it was like well, how did they do this? Is a sign and trade that this happened, this and this and this, and like 2 minutes later you see Damian Lillard waved and stretch, and it was like, what? And then it's like doing the math of like, okay, how much dead cap is about to be on the books for how long now? So you got 22.5 million on the books for the next 5 years. And it's like, it was just so many emotions. Like I felt bad for Dame initially too, of just like, man, when you get waived and stretched at this point in your career, especially with an Achilles injury, that can be tough. Sad about how it just didn't work out in Milwaukee. Like the first year, the adjustment, this year, it just, injuries along the way for both of them. It felt disappointing. Like there was a lot of meat left on the bone for that duo, but also like it just didn't work. And the Bucks said, we don't have much more time to dabble to see if this works. So they had to do something. And the further we get away from the Dame wave and stretch, and then also him going back to Portland, which feels like poetic in itself, it feels like the Bucks made the right move that they had to make at this time, understanding the window with Giannis, understanding the East and the landscape of the conference this year, where it feels really, really open. So why not do something where we might catch lightning in a bottle and be able to strike?
So how do you think the fit between Giannis and Miles Turner will be on the floor when we get to that point and the season gets here in like 8 weeks?
It's crazy to think that it's only like 2 months away from the season starting. I can't wait. But
I mean, 2 months from today, depending on when this comes out, there will be regular season basketball games. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah. Because I know it will be. I can't wait. Miles Turner, great fit. a great fit. And I know some people were thinking like it might be a little too much money for Miles Turner, but there's a specific type of big that works next to Giannis, and Brook Lopez was that blueprint of what it looks like. Giannis himself has admitted does not like playing the five for long stretches. It's not what he enjoys to do. You put Miles Turner next to him, a guy who can stretch the floor, similar to Brook Lopez. It's like he gives you all the things, most of the things that Brook Lopez gave you by being 7 years younger. On top of that, a bit more agile on the perimeter if he gets drawn out there. Still not somebody you want to like throw out on the perimeter, like go switch everything, Miles, and go crazy. Like you still got to protect him a little bit, but he's much more agile than Brook Lopez. He's a better mid-range shooter than Brook Lopez is at this point as well. But the one area for Miles Turner where I have concern, if you want to call it concern or just keeping my eye on it through the season, two things in particular. One, Brook Lopez was an Iron Man. Outside of the year after they won the championship where he had the back surgery and he missed most of the season, you can count on Brook Lopez for 80 games a year, and he's going to play them like very consistent. And two, the rebounding, which I know people look at Brook Lopez's raw rebounding numbers, and it's always like, this dude is trash. He's 7 feet tall and he gets like 4 rebounds a game. What are we doing? But the team always rebounded better when he was on the floor because he boxed out, let his teammates grab those boards and go from there. So for Miles Turner, just the rebounds and then just how much he plays this season as well, I think is a big one. But on court fit next to Giannis, they're about the same age. He spaces the floor. He plays defense. It's what you want.
Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's a 401k or properties or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there is Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. I linked all my accounts to Monarch and immediately spotted a few subscriptions I wasn't even using. Canceling those all can save you money every month. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNFL.
Does Kawhi Leonard have anything left to prove?
You are Locked On Clippers, your daily Los Angeles Clippers podcast.
Does Kawhi Leonard have anything to prove in his career? No, absolutely not. He has nothing left to prove in his career. He's already one of the best small forwards to ever play the game. He's got 2 finals MVPs. He averaged 30 points as the best player on a title team. How many people in NBA history can say they did that? I'll tell you right now, nobody in the 60s averaged 30-plus points in a title run. Why do I say the 60s? Because that's the one decade I've studied back to front. There are very few guys that have done that. Kawhi Leonard being one of them. So no, he doesn't have anything left to prove in his career, in my opinion. He's solidified, stamped. He'd be a Hall of Famer first ballot if his career ended right now. But does he have anything left to prove as a Clipper? I believe he does. Because when Kawhi Leonard was brought here or signed here, and we made the trade for Paul George to join him, I and many other Clipper fans thought guaranteed ring at some point. You know, we're getting the best player arguably in the NBA doing something that no other player has ever done, which is to win a championship and win finals MVP and then leave. No one has ever done that. Kawhi Leonard was the first person to do it. And he comes to our team. And of course, we know how 2020 went. That was a championship expectations kind of season. Then 2021, that was another championship expectations kind of season. And that was the one where we're all going to be saying that what if for the rest of our lives, if Kawhi Leonard hadn't gone hurt, would that have been the year for us? I genuinely believe we make it out of the West. It's just a matter of could we have beaten the Milwaukee Bucks? But 2023, because Kawhi Leonard missed all of 2022, that wasn't really a championship year. 2023, we thought, okay, we're going into the season. I literally predicted 60 wins, like when I first became the host of this show, and that aged poorly because of our terrible process throughout the season. In my opinion, that's the most disappointing season in Clipper history. So that was a big disappointment. Even though Kawhi Leonard, after a really rocky start health-wise, ended up turning up and having a really good second half of the season where he played at an all-NBA level. Looked insane in the playoffs in those first 2 games against the Suns, and then that was the last we saw of him. And then 2024, we make the trade for Harden. We are rolling at one point, first seed in the West, and then Kawhi Leonard, has the knee issues at the end of the season, and we don't really get a full version of Kawhi in the playoffs. So, in this past season, we never had championship expectations, but we were going into the playoffs thinking we could make some noise. So we have failed in terms of if the goal was to bring in Kawhi Leonard and win a championship. I know it's hard. If anybody knows how hard it is, it's Clipper fans in terms of winning a championship. But we have failed in that goal. We've made it to 1 conference finals, and I think when we got Kawhi Leonard, that we expected more. We definitely did. So for me, Kawhi Leonard has played 6 years now with the Clippers, but really 5 years with the Clippers because he missed all of the 2021-22 season. Now, I don't think any Clipper fan in their right mind can say that Kawhi Leonard is the greatest Clipper of all time. I think he's the best player to have played for the Clippers. Just like LeBron James in his prime in Miami was the best player to have played for the Miami Heat, but the greatest player in Miami Heat history is Dwayne Wade. The greatest players in Clipper history are Chris Paul and Blake Griffin. Now, did they ever have a season, or I shouldn't say a season, but did they ever reach the heights of 2021 Kawhi? No, they're just not as good at basketball. But because of the frequent injuries, Kawhi Leonard hasn't taken that mantle of the best Clipper of all time. Like when we first got him, I was like, oh my God, Kawhi is going to be the best Clipper of all time. He's going to take us to a ring, and it's going to be amazing. Kawhi Leonard is one of the better Clippers of all time. We did the Clipper Mount Rushmore episode with Grant Money Mona a couple weeks ago, and he had Kawhi on his Mount Rushmore. I had him right outside it. And again, the standard for being a Clipper Mount Rushmore guy isn't very high. You know what I'm saying? We have not done a lot in our history in terms of winning, and a lot of that's because of Donald Sterling's cheap ass. But Kawhi Leonard has a lot to prove, in my opinion, as a Clipper. We still need another conference finals run. And to be honest, if you think that he needs to win a championship as a Clipper, then that's a high bar. And so I don't know if he needs to win a championship just because I feel like that window might have closed and he's had so many injuries and stuff like that. But I think it would be nice for us to win a series again for starters. I mean, it really depends. When you say, what does Kawhi Leonard have left to prove as a Clipper? I don't think it's less about proving. It's more like, what does he have left to accomplish? Actually, I'll put it this way. What will make someone say, and I shouldn't say someone, I'll just say me, because right now, because I'm the host and I'm a Clipper fan, so people look at me for my opinions about Clipper stuff. What would it take for me to say Kawhi Leonard's tenure with the Clippers was positive relative to expectations? I feel like saying championship would be kind of a cop-out at this point, but that was the expectation. So, have I lowered it subconsciously because of what's happened? You can say that. But for me, I'd say at least to get to a second conference finals. I think that would make me say that this was a very positive experience, even though we may not win a ring. To get to multiple conference finals when we hadn't made it to one before he arrived, I think that would make me say, yeah, he was still a great Clipper. Even though it might not have gone exactly how we wanted, he still is a great Clipper. So I'd say another conference finals. But as far as his career, he's got nothing left to prove. He's a top 10 small forward all time. I think anybody that denies that is kind of ludicrous. If we want to talk about just how good he is at basketball, he might even be creeping into that top 5. I think the guys that there's no conversation are Larry Bird and LeBron. I think that's a non-conversation. I think Kevin Durant's honestly a conversation, especially if you want to go with the peak of his career. I think, as much as it pains me to say it because he's my UMass brethren, I think he's got a case in his prime and his, at his best that he's better than Dr. J because of his shooting and his ball handling. Although I will say, I think Doc's usage of the big hands was way better from all the tape that I've watched. And his finishing is and his athleticism is just on another planet compared to Kawhi. But I think Kawhi literally has a case to be the 3rd best small forward of all time if you really want to go there. But because of the longevity, because of the lack, when you compare him to someone like John Havlicek, who never got hurt and won 8 championships and was 6-0 in the finals and had incredible runs and was the best player on 2 championship teams, arguably, then it's hard. But again, whatever criteria you have, if Kawhi's not top 10 small forward, I think you're kind of being a hater. And I would definitely consider him a top 10 small forward, but not really for what he's done with the Clippers. You know what I'm saying? But that's my whole point. Career-wise, he's got nothing to prove. As a Clipper, I think he's got some more to prove. I think he's got some more success to be had.
August 26th is officially FanDuel Futures Day, a brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and preseason hunches. For just 24 hours, FanDuel is giving you deals on NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling your MVP, eyeing a long shot division winner, or ready to crown your Super Bowl champ before week 1 even kicks off, this is your moment. Perhaps you believe the Green Bay Packers are going to win the Super Bowl, or maybe you have some division winner dark horses you'd like to parlay. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets now, because Futures Day is one day and one day only. FanDuel, play your game.
How much did Daryl Morey really try to fix the Sixers' Paul George problem?
You are Locked On 76ers, your daily Philadelphia 76ers podcast.
Reading some comments after yesterday's show, highlighting the Paul George and Joel Embiid problem that the Sixers have right now. And almost how much optimism would be injected into the Sixers fan base if they only had to deal with Joel Embiid and not Paul George, and they somehow turned Paul George into an asset that could play every day for the Sixers, someone like Lauri Markkanen, and produce. But I want to go back to this past draft, even though that's what got the wheels turning. We had talked at the time, Keith, about the Sixers trying to trade Joel Embiid. You had heard rumblings of the Sixers at least trying to fix the problem of Paul George. How, first off, do you want to go back on that? Do you want to reiterate it? And second, how hard, if at all, did they really try?
I mean, here's the deal. Like, I think you know what, from what I was told, they tried to get rid of him, but it's one of those things where it's all about, you know, doing your due diligence, right? So it's all about now here's the thing. The 76ers are going to say, no, that's not true, you know, this and that. But even before during the trade deadline, there were people telling me around the league that the 76ers were trying to shop him. Now the 76ers would say, no, we're not trying to shop him. Well, you look at it before the draft, there was a report coming out of Utah, Salt Lake City, from a reputable reporter who covers the Jazz, who've been covering the Jazz for a while, who said that the 76ers, you know, approached the Utah Jazz about possibly making the trade, right? Sending Paul George there. Then after the draft, there was a report in New York, one of the New York papers, that said that sources in New York said, hey, we thought we might have had a deal in place with the 76ers, but we didn't want to take Paul George. So to me, it's one of those things where when you look at it and you're the 76ers, you know, they say it's about doing due diligence. Now, you'll say, okay, well, if we do like VJ Edgecombe, but if we can also get rid of Paul George's salary, let's just see what let's just throw it out there and see if somebody's willing to take it. And if they're not willing to take him, then what we'll do is we'll deny it that we tried to do it, and we'll go there, and whoever we draft, we'll say, this guy was the number one guy that we always wanted. So to me, I do think that, I mean, the 76ers going in there, like, let's fix it. They have to know that they have a problem, right? They're not going to publicly say they have a problem, but what you're going to try to do is you're going to try to get rid of or correct the problem. And the quickest way of doing that right now would be moving Paul George's contract, right? So yeah, I believe all that stuff. I honestly do. But again, it's one of those things where, and then you were hearing that from around the league too, like, hey, be on the lookout. They may be trying to get rid of PG, but at the same time, publicly, they're going to come out and say, no, that's not true. Where do you get that from? You know, yada, yada, you know, you can't believe anything, you know, leading up, which is true. Sometimes you can't believe anything, but what it was is, you know, you have a report coming out of New York after the draft. You have a report heading into the draft coming out of Salt Lake City. And you hear people saying, you know, they wouldn't be surprised if the 76ers tried to move PG. But let's be honest, that's a tough deal to do.
Oh,
Like
absolutely.
you can't. It's hard to get rid of him. It really is. It's extremely hard to get rid of him. So I'm not surprised that they inquired about it, but I'm also not surprised that they ended up keeping the draft pick and drafting a player and trying to see what they can do with this roster.
So that obviously is a gut punch there. But first off, just to go back to something here. So Utah, source in Utah, New York, I mean, not even source, media members are saying that Sixers dangled Paul George out there. All right, to trade.
Well, I don't know if they. I want to say the media members are saying that they dangled him. What I will say is that there was a report. There was an article written in one of the New York papers where he spoke to a higher up with with the Brooklyn Nets, who said that they didn't want to take Paul George. They could have possibly moved up, but they didn't want to take Paul George.
All right. So basically, it's two different outlets in two different cities, two different markets.
And they talk to sources. They talk to prominent sources within those two organizations. Yep.
My point is, the Utah media and New York media isn't getting together to be like, "Hey, let's start a rumor about it." You know what I mean? So yes, this is true. It happened as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah,
and obviously, the Sixers aren't going to put it out there that they're shopping him. They want everything. No, we're positive. Exactly, we're positive. This is great.
You gotta have a guy come back in the locker room. You want him to be happy. You don't want him to be like, okay, well, if you're trying to trade me. This is where I want to go. You don't want that. You know what I mean? It's like, well,
here's the gut punch.
It's a whole thing. Like, no matter who you draft, that's always was your number one option. Like, this is the guy we wanted, no matter who it was. It's kind of like you look at the Cleveland Browns. They got Shedeur Sanders and they got Dylan Gabriel, and they saying Dylan Gabriel was always the guy we wanted. Shedeur Sanders is the guy we wanted. Nah, bro, y'all messed that thing up. Like, you know what I mean? So it's just, you understand what I'm saying? So
absolutely. Absolutely. But here's where the gut punch comes in, because after that, and look, we've talked about this before, but now another story's out there, and it's just a fake trade proposal. It's a conversation piece in the offseason, and I get it, but the gut punch is that I think any 76ers fan would be excited to learn that Paul George is no longer on the Sixers and they can start building towards the future. Now, the gut punch, unfortunately, is the pick you're talking about, is the pick that the Sixers used to get VJ Edgecombe here in Philadelphia. You're talking about the third overall pick. The fictitious trade proposals for just conversation pieces and writing pieces is a 2028 pick that the Sixers own from the LA Clippers that they're dangling out there to attach to Paul George in the opportunity maybe to trade him, to unload him. But if you're not going to package Paul George, who's also younger now than he will be next year, obviously, and also you're not going to get probably a third overall pick again. If you can't package that with Paul George, he ain't going anywhere. That's the gut punch in all this, Keith. You have two different media outlets, two different cities, two different markets saying, oh, yeah, they're talking about trading him. Sixers are obviously going to deny it, and you're right. But you're also packaging him with a third overall pick, and you still couldn't move him. That's the gut punch as far as I'm concerned.
Well, the problem is, like, yeah, that's a gut punch, but you think about it, like, the guy, he has a lot of years left on his deal, and he didn't play extremely well. And you're bringing him into the situation, it's kind of like, it comes a point in time where teams want to improve. And I'm not saying that he's a bad player, because he's not a bad player, but you're looking at that, and if it didn't work out in Philly, a team that was trying to be a contender, like, are we going to be able to move him? Like, are we going to be able to move him? Or how much better is he going to get with our young core that's really struggling? You know what I mean? Like, we're trying to play certain players who are younger, and what are we going to do with PG? So they were saying in the 2027, see, the thing about it is when you look at the Utah Jazz and you say to Utah, you're like, okay, 2027, that's around the time that we may be competitive. So having that draft pick is cool. But at the same time, we're talking about guys who are not even all-stars getting traded and the team getting multiple first-round picks for these players, right? So you mean to tell me that you can go out there and get Laurie Marketing for one first-round pick and Paul George? Come on, man. Come on. Like, that's not working anymore. Like, like Mikal Bridges. What did the Knicks do? The Knicks gave up 4 first-round picks for Mikal Bridges, right? Mikal Bridges was never an all-star. You know what I mean? So, like, and then if you're a guest, so, like, basically, the market is already set. Why are you going to go lower than the market and then get a player who is worse than the guy that you're trying to trade? Like, I mean, you're trying to, you're worse than the guy that you're going to trade away. Like, it just doesn't work out. Like, you hold pat. If you're trying to get rid of him, you could get someone else. But, like, let's face it, he's been a solid player there. They would be foolish to get rid of him for Paul George in a first-round pick. When, what's the guy, Desmond Baines goes to Orlando, and, like, they get everything for this guy, right? So it's kind of like, yo, y'all got to step your trade game up, like negotiation. You know what I mean? It's like going into a jewelry store asking for a Rolex for $100. It ain't happening, Captain. It ain't happening.